What is good, everyone? This is your host, Deanna Radulescu with Label Free Podcast. To live your best life, you must live label free. As always, bring incredible guests from all over the world. So sit back, relax, and tune in. My next guest is Parsi origin, born in London, but raised in North India. She is a banking and financial professional, but now an author. Please welcome Farah. Farah, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm really happy to be here.
So you are in India now?
I'm actually in Dubai. In
Dubai. Read that. Yeah. I love Dubai. You know what? I have the most incredible guests. You guys make me want to travel the world and come visit you. And it's just amazing.
I think that's the beauty. Exactly. I'm meeting yourself and other sort of hosts around the world. And it's just amazing how we bridge this distance so seamlessly on the screen.
I know.
So it's pretty cool. Yeah.
Very, very, very cool. Well, thank you for joining us today. And I kind of want to kick things off with your book. Your book was inspired by a tragedy that happened to you with your mother. So can you kind of lead us up to that moment and what transpired for you to write the book?
Sure. So as you alluded, my mother, she lost her life in India. But before we probably even get to the heart of the story, my mother was this very larger-than-life character. She lived a rather sort of unconventional life in a small town in northern India where we come from. Parsis are part of India, and yet we have a very distinct identity, a cultural identity. And my mother had trained as a lawyer, and where everyone would wear saris or salwar kurtas, which is the more traditional outfit, my mother would stride town in trousers and her lawyer's outfit, smoking cigarettes, and decided to separate from my father, back in the 70s, where it definitely was not the norm. Like divorce was not commonplace in this little town. And she chose to do things on her own terms and would always sort of not be too concerned about what people said about her. And I, as a child, wanted to fit in. And I would sort of say to her, Mom, if you're coming to the parent-teacher meeting, can you just dress a little bit, more in tune with what everyone else might be wearing? She would be like, you cannot stop people talking any more than you can stop dogs barking. So I know it sounds a little bit harsh, but it's kind of, she was living her life unapologetically and encouraging me to do so. And I think that's a lesson that's come to me much later in life. I have more, if you like, respect for conventional wisdom, but the whole social norms bit, that bit, I just assure it's like it's not for me. But she was very conscious of social norms as well at the same time as being unconventional. So it was this very interesting mix. And as you mentioned, I was born in London. And then when I was 4, we went back to India to see my maternal grandmother, supposedly for a month or 2 over the winter months. And then my mother made the choice to separate from my father, who were having an affair, and she found out. So we stayed for 14 years as it happened. And as a child, at that time, parenting was not, we sit you down and let you know what's going on. You just sort of roll with the punches. So I was educated in northern India in a convent that my mother also attended. That's where life, that's the life I knew growing up. And it gave me such a great platform to understand different cultures and to understand the different nuances. So we fast forward, I grew up, age 18, I moved to London. I then built my career in banking and finance. I moved to Dubai. And I was in Dubai when I got a phone call back in 2006 to let me know. So it was the middle of the night, I was groggy, sleepy, and my stepfather called to say my mother had been shot. It was a case of, I'd like to think, wrong place, wrong time. She intervened and intercepted some youths who were behaving badly with my sister-in-law. And in India, there's this, it's quite prevalent, and yet we don't seem to be able to address it, where young men feel they can make lewd remarks or gestures or comments at young girls. And it's not just catcalling. It can be a little bit more than that and very predatory, to the point where women feel unsafe and just walking out at night, you think twice about it. And so my mum, being the person she was, she stepped out, asked them to apologize, asked them, if they thought they were behaving appropriately. And there were 4 of them. And what she didn't know at the time, or none of us knew, was they were intoxicated and there was possibly some substances being used as well. So they ran off, and the one who hadn't apologized turned around, came back, and took out a gun and shot my mother at very close range.
Wow.
And obviously the impact of that, there was bodily wounds, and she was taken to the hospital immediately. But Lucknow couldn't deal with that sort of serious injury, so she was all left to Delhi, which is the capital of India, and I flew from Dubai into India. She survived for 25 days and was coherent and awake, and even though she had a tracheotomy, she was gesticulating and communicating,
Sure.
not necessarily speaking, but communicating. And she said, if the same thing, I was in the same situation again, I would do the same. That was her spirit. And then, unfortunately, the internal wounds were so severe that there was internal bleeding and she didn't make it through. And that's how we lost her. And then I think the book is to pay homage to her. It's to honor her legacy, and not just the end and how she ended, but her whole life, and this brilliant personality that she was. And it wasn't so much a conscious decision or I want to sit down and write about my mother. It was just sitting, words coming, and I didn't know if I had the gift to tell a story or if there was something to be shared. And, I shared it with a few sort of trusted friends and advisors, and they encouraged me, and I kept writing. And many years later, many reviews, revisions, rejections later, the book is here. But it's been a labor of love, and it's been quite a journey to bring it to life. But I'm super happy to be able to share it with you.
Yes. What a beautiful way to honor her memory.
Thank you.
Yeah. And she sounds like an amazing woman, just like, what's the word I'm looking for? Completely not in her time, just like paving the path for women of today that are really just living life on their own terms. And I love that,
Yeah.
My mom is a little bit of an independent, crazy soul herself. And I get a lot of that strength and that boldness from her. I can't imagine what it would be like to write a book on her memory. That had to be kind of cathartic.
Definitely. So as part of the grief sort of process, as I was going through it and trying to make sense of it, I went for counseling, and they encouraged us to write our feelings. So and I'd always journal. So writing was kind of part and parcel of it. But as I was typing the story, there are parts of it that, the box of tissues had to be really close by, and I went through quite a few. And it definitely helped me release some of the emotion. And so now I can talk about it without the emotional charge. So they say you tell the story different when you're healed, right?
Right.
So I can narrate it without the welling up of the emotion necessarily, and I can think of her and their happy memories, and I can laugh at an incident that occurred, and it's not all centered around her passing, which is, I think, the point I needed to be able to get to before I could share it.
Yeah, I can see that. On your website, she had a saying that she used to live by, and can you share that with us?
Sure. So she typically, if I was complaining to her about something, she would say, just remember you chose this. Like, I'm fairly sure I did not choose whatever was going on. And she said, we choose our lives for the lessons we will learn. And that was something as a younger individual I struggled with. I was like, I'm really sure this was not my choice or my doing. But as we get older, I find myself reflecting that if I had not had a particular challenge, any challenge, whether it was, I faced redundancy, or I faced grief, or I faced a divorce, would I be the person I am today? Would I have learned, or would that aspect of my personality have come to the fore? Would it have been allowed to blossom, or that strength come through that you need to get over whatever the challenge is? So there is truth in it. And we all, they say there's no such thing as coincidences. We meet people, our paths are meant to cross, and we learn the lessons and we grow from it. You can choose to become embittered or, wallow in the whatever the challenge is. But if you can find the strength and find that little bit of wisdom that's buried in there and helps you to grow and you to channel whatever the emotion is, then I feel you come out stronger and better for it.
Yeah, for sure. I would totally agree. What a beautiful like idea for people to adopt into their lives. You know, I agree with that. Like we in the moment we might not want to accept that we're making the choice to do what we're doing and then learn the lesson later. But really, when you hindsight and you look back and this is like, wow, I had to learn that. I made a choice and I have to you have to take responsibility for the choices you make. And that's where the lesson comes in. If you made a good or a bad choice, right?
Correct. The consequences to everything, right? So you have to, a part of adulting is knowing that if you make a choice, as you say, good or bad, there's going to be a consequence and a knock-on impact that you have to take in your stride and roll on, just learn from it and keep going.
Yeah, for sure. What's the name of the book?
The book is called Meher and Me. So my mother's name was Meher. So it's about her and me. I'm more the spectator in this journey, but as a child, there wasn't much say in what was going on. But it shows the evolution of, it's a mother-daughter story at the heart of it, right? So which I'm sure your listeners would relate to, whether mother-daughter or mother-child. And it's all the facets. It's not always all rosy, right? And mom having separated from my dad and divorced, there was, a little bit of angst as a teenager. We rode that wave, when I had my daughter. You then realize that mother's love, how unconditional it is, regardless of how it's delivered. And it sort of completes that cycle and it brings home the fact that you can't replace and there is no substitute for that. So it shows it, and then how, yes, we lost her, but how I want to honor her and the strength that she had and her legacy of, standing up for what you believe is right, regardless of the personal consequences in a way, because she paid dearly for standing up for what she thought would be the right thing to do.
Yeah, I was wondering, like, how was she accepted in your society there where you lived? I mean, if she was definitely breaking the barriers of what the norm was, like wearing saris, and in India, things are very traditional, even today. So for her to not follow those traditions had to be very interesting for her during that time.
So she was born 1947, which is the year India gained independence from the Brits, right? So there was this whole generation that's filled with this sort of zest for life, and all her friends, they lived these larger than life sort of, just their journeys are so interesting because each of them have taken these sort of uncharted courses. But mom was really loved because she had grown up in town. So everyone knew her from when she was a child. And she had always been flamboyant and always been, not bucking the norm, so to speak. And she had so many best friends. Like everyone claims mom was her best friend, and that's how she made people feel. So it's genuine. It's not like they're putting it on. And I was at a function recently standing with one of my mother's friends who was very close to her. And we met this lady for the first time, and she said, oh, Meher was my best friend. And I'm like, okay, I'm sure she was. I've never met you, but I'm sure she was, because that was how she related to people. Everyone felt they were super close to her. And she had this warmth and this sort of non-judgmental approach to life. She didn't judge. She was open, and anyone slightly left of center, she loved. She would gather them all at our home and love spirituality. So every traveling sort of holy man would be called in, charts, astrology charts pulled out, palm reading, anything like that esoteric, she was a big fan of and gave that love to me as well, I think.
Wow.
But yeah, she was embraced. I think her entire personality was embraced.
That's amazing. So growing up, though, was uncomfortable for you, but now hindsight looking back, it's probably something that you value very much.
I do. Like it as a child, different story, but as an adult, India is where my heart is, and it's in Technicolor. The memories, the thoughts, the dreams are all very, very sort of vivid and in color. And now I find myself sort of exhibiting similar behaviors,
Really, like,
I,
yeah.
like I am drawn to something that's not exactly cookie cutter or doesn't, that isn't the norm. I
Label
like
free.
people who are exactly. And it's like, when you go on a website and they ask you to categorize yourself in terms of your ethnicity. And I always choose other because I don't want to be labeled as
Oh,
any one thing. And
yeah.
to be honest, I don't fit any of the labels that they put in there. So I agree, we are label free. We are the sum of our parts. We don't have to be, categorized as one narrow niche person, characteristic, personality type.
I love
So
it.
yeah.
I love it. What's one thing that you want people, and this book is you're a best-selling author, I read on your website.
Thank you.
What's one thing that you want the takeaway from your book when people read it?
I'd love people to be hopeful. I think, all of us are going to face something in life, some sort of challenge, some sort of grief, some sort of hardship. And I think it's about finding the tools that work for you. In the book, I talk about yoga, I talk about my love of baking, food, and other aspects that I might have used to help you. So everyone will find what works for them.
Yeah.
Find a tribe that supports you and has your back, and people you can sort of be yourself with and let the emotions flow with. And find the joy in the small things, the gratitude, the thankful for the small things, and everything else, builds from there.
I love it. It's beautiful. Where can people purchase the book, learn more about you, and support you, Farah?
Thank you. So website, as you mentioned, farahpress.com. There are pictures and photographs so people get a glimpse of the world I'm talking about. Hopefully, there's a link on there to purchase the book directly from Amazon or any other online retailer. And on Instagram, I'm farah.press, so they can come along, see the journey. Would love to hear feedback and comments. And if the story touches your listeners and resonates with them, would love for them to share it with somebody else who might need to hear it at the same time.
Excellent. You guys, I'm going to put those links in the show notes, so don't hesitate to go give her a follow on Instagram and go check out her website and read a little bit more about story, and most certainly purchase the book. I'm sure you will be very moved by the memories she shares of her mother. Farah, this is the part of the show where I like to ask for last words of wisdom or advice. What would you like to leave with us today?
I would say trust the process, right? Trust yourself, trust your instincts, trust the process. They say the universe doesn't give you more than you can handle. So you definitely can handle whatever's coming your way, and you'll come out stronger from it.
Ooh, I like that. Yes. Beautiful words of wisdom. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing your story and sharing the memory of your mother. I think it's so beautiful. And I think she's up wherever she's at, smiling down and just loving you from afar and embracing everything that you're doing with your life. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You guys, this is your host, Deanna Radulescu with Label Free Podcast. To live your best life, you must live label free. As always, don't forget to subscribe, follow, rate, review, comment, share, all those good things. And I'll be back soon with more dynamic guests.